Excursions on an Alaskan cruise, they'll cost you more than any other cruise itinerary, sometimes double or triple what you'll even pay in the Caribbean. But here's what the cruise lines don't tell you or don't want you to know. In certain ports like Ketchikan and Juneau, some of the best experiences are completely free and walkable from the ship. I'm going to show you exactly which ports you can skip the expensive tours and which ones are worth the splurge. So let's talk everything Alaskan cruising. Hi, I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship. And let's start with what you need to know before you even book your Alaskan cruise. If you're cruising to Alaska, time zones and daylight can really trip people up. Most Alaska cruises sail from Seattle or Vancouver. By the way, I do have a complete guide to Seattle. I'll drop that down below in the comments. It starts in Pacific time, but once you start hitting ports like Ketchikan, Juneau, Sitka, Skagway, you'll be on Alaska time, which is an hour behind. Now, some cruise lines stay on Pacific time the entire sailing, others switch to Alaska time when you reach those waters, and those that do, you're kind of going back and forth, which can be maddening. Now, the only clock in cruise world that matters is your ship's clock. So tour operators, shuttles, and your all aboard time, they all run generally on ship time. Now, it's helpful to set your phone to manual mode because otherwise it will auto update and you'll have a discrepancy between the time on your phone and the time on the ship. Using airplane mode can also help prevent that default. And also using an old-fashioned small battery-powered clock. I have one, I keep it on a keychain. I'll drop my link below. I set it to ship time. I know it's always set to ship time. So that's important to keep track of time because it can drive you crazy. And when it comes to time, here's a little curveball. If you take a day trip from Skagway into the Yukon, you'll actually jump back into Pacific time again and then switch back. It's super confusing, but it's really important, more so on an Alaskan cruise even than other itineraries, to make sure that you know what time it is and you stick to that ship time. Now, another thing that can cause a little angst on an Alaskan cruise is the daggone daylight. You layer these long days of daylight with the time confusion, and it can actually just completely throw your body out of whack. During the summer months, you can expect sunrise before 5 a.m. and sunset well after 9 p.m., especially in northern ports like Skagway. My most recent Alaskan cruise was in June, and it was bright as day, and it was broad daylight at like 4 a.m., and I had a balcony room, and it just really threw my internal clock out of whack. So what's happening here is that midnight sun effect. Bright skies when your body thinks it's afternoon. So if you have an ocean view or a balcony room on an Alaskan cruise, I strongly recommend bringing an eye mask and hair clips, those little claw clips for hairs, to use them actually to clip your curtain so you don't have that big seam of light down in the middle. And if you're really sensitive to this kind of thing, before you book your Alaskan cruise, while I do think an Alaskan cruise is absolutely worth the cost of an ocean view and definitely worth the investment of a balcony room, if you're really sensitive to light and your circadian rhythms and your body clock, you might actually want to go with an interior and not have to deal with those issues at all. Now, these long days do have a benefit. The payoff is that you can explore long after dinner. That is if your port of call keeps you at that port for a long time, which is not always the case in Alaska. And you can even photograph glowing skies at 10 p.m. from the ship. Just don't forget something you probably wouldn't think to pack on an Alaskan cruise. I'm not kidding when I say bring your sunglasses and your sunscreen, because that Alaska daylight can also be super deceptive even under the clouds. And on my most recent visit, Alaska was experiencing record high temperatures. I'm not kidding, in the 80s, and I wore my sunglasses the entire time. Speaking of, let's talk about what to pack for an Alaskan cruise, because this creates a lot of angst with cruisers. Even seasoned cruisers that can pack for a Caribbean cruise like no problem sometimes struggle when it comes to Alaskan cruises. And I remember dealing with the struggle as well. I thought I needed to bring my big Ugg boots, a big heavy jacket, and coats and scarves and gloves, and that's not always the case. So packing right can make or break your trip, and it can cause a lot of stress, sometimes unnecessarily. Now, the key when it comes to Alaska is, first of all, it's not always as cold as you think it might be. Depending on the time of year when you're sailing during Alaskan cruise season, the temperature can be warmer than you might think. But even still, the key word here is layers. When I say layers, I'm not kidding. Layers, layers, layers. Layers is the name of the game when it comes to packing for an Alaskan cruise. And forget those bulky coats. You are not going to want to bring a big, heavy, bulky coat. You're going to get a lot more mileage out of flexible layers that you can peel off and put back on. Summer temperatures do usually hover between the mid 40s. So again, chilly, but not as cold as you might think, and the upper 60s with rare spikes into the 70s, and the really rare spikes like I encountered when it was in the 80s. Start with a moisture wicking base. Then add a fleece or a light sweater, and then finish it with a waterproof shell. That actually keeps out both wind and rain, and having a hood is very helpful because it is very drizzly in a lot of Alaskan ports. What you'll learn is that Ketchikan is actually one of the rainiest cities in the United States, but most of the time it's not a torrential downpour, but it's more of kind of like a misty drizzle. But still, you'll be thankful that you have that waterproof layer that's not too heavy, and you also have a hood. A solid rain jacket beats an umbrella every time. Quick dry fabrics are also going to be your best friend in Alaska. Now, when it comes to shoes, again, forget the big old clunky snow boots. Bring something that has traction, a lightweight trail shoe or a broken-in hiking boot, and an extra pair of socks. And when it comes to gloves, hats, and scarves and things like that, you might want to bring them, you may not need them, but it's better to have them and not need them than need them and not have them. But you don't really need those big, thick snow gloves. Thin gloves are usually fine. Now, prices for gear are obviously higher when you're in Alaska, so if you didn't bring something and you end up needing it, it's gonna cost you. Another thing to consider before you even book your Alaskan cruise is the type of itinerary that you want. When you're looking for Alaskan itineraries, you'll see terms like Inside Passage and Gulf of Alaska. The Inside Passage refers to that path that goes along the southeastern coast that weaves in between islands and fjords. It's protected water, and it's nice because it's calm, it's scenic because it is protected, it's surrounded by mountains and islands, so you're not gonna get those really rough waves like you would if you're far out to sea. Ports like Ketchikan, Juneau, Sitka, and Skagway sit along that Inside Passage, so those are popular ports of call on Alaskan itineraries. And you'll get those beautiful, gorgeous, stereotypical, stunning Alaskan postcard views the entire way, but with the benefit of calm seas and smooth sailing for the most part. Now, the Gulf of Alaska route, sometimes called the Outside Passage, that's going to cross out into open ocean. Because it is more exposed, it can be choppier. So if you're prone to motion sickness, stick with an Inside Passage itinerary for those calmer waters. Another thing you have to consider is if you want a sea-only itinerary or a land-sea combo, which is also sometimes called a cruise tour. Sea only is your classic 7-day or so round trip from Seattle or Vancouver, or sometimes one way between Vancouver and Seward or Whittier, Alaska. The land-sea options tack on a land option, often 3 to 7 days of traveling inland by train or motor coach to places like Denali, Fairbanks, or the Kenai Peninsula. If you've got the time and budget, that sea-land combo is absolutely phenomenal. You'll get to see things that you can't necessarily see from the ship or ports of call. You'll get mountains and wildlife that you're not going to see from the ship, but it's definitely pricier, usually significantly so, and adds more logistic considerations. But if you have the budget and you don't mind the extra planning, it's definitely worth looking into. Now let's talk about departure ports and cruise season. Most Alaskan cruises leave from either Seattle or Vancouver. Seattle is typically the go-to for US cruisers. Again, I've got a full Seattle port guide. I'll drop it down below to give you all the details about cruising out of Seattle. And Vancouver is another common departure point, often with one-way itineraries that start and end in Seward or Whittier. The Alaskan cruise season runs late April through late September. I have cruised all different types of the cruise season. My latest Alaskan cruise was mid-September. It was still lovely, so I don't think there's any bad time to cruise during the Alaska cruise season. Now, the peak months being June, July, August, they're going to bring you the best chances of warmest weather and the longest days. Early May, late September, you're increasing your chances of it being cooler, rainier, but also less crowded. Now, if you want to catch the salmon runs, which I have unfortunately, all of my times, I have never seen, aim for late July through early September. That is peak salmon run season. If you're into whale watching season runs roughly May through mid-September, so you're probably going to get to see some of that regardless of when you cruise during Alaska season. I also want to touch upon Alaska's indigenous heritage because as a nerd, and this is why I love to cruise, I love learning about the culture and the history. This is a really cool thing about the Alaskan cruises. As you travel through Southeast Alaska, you're moving through some traditional lands of native peoples, including the Tlingit culture. That's the most common, you'll hear about it a lot. Depending on the cruise line that you sail, they'll have a naturalist that will teach you about the nature and the animals, and they'll spot bald eagles and things like that. But they'll also have someone there educating you on the indigenous cultures. I love Holland America Line because I think of all the cruise lines, they do the best job of satisfying my nerd fulfillment of wanting to learn more about cultures, and I learned so much about the Tlingit people in particular on my Holland America cruise. So if you like that kind of thing, you also might want to consider different cruise lines because you'll get more education on certain cruise lines versus others. But if you don't care about that, it doesn't matter. When it comes to the culture there, totem poles, you'll see they're very common. They tell family stories, they mark events, they honor ancestors. They're more than just a pretty totem pole. You'll see them in nearly every port, especially in Ketchikan and Sitka. Now, if you have time, visit places that give you more education and insight into the culture, such as Saxman Native Village or the Totem Heritage Center in Ketchikan, or the Sitka National Historic Park. I've been to all these, they're great, especially the Sitka National Historic Park. You walk through this beautiful walking path in the woods, and there are just dozens of these gorgeous totem poles and programs that teach you about them. These are not just exhibits, but they're active expressions of a living heritage, and for me, that's what I absolutely love most about cruising. Now let's talk a little bit about the individual ports, some of the most common ones that you will visit on a sea-based Alaskan cruise. First, let's start with Ketchikan. This is usually the first stop heading north through that inside passage, and it's one of the easiest ports to explore without booking anything. It actually has the nickname of the first city because it is often the first city that adventurers encounter when they're traveling to Alaska. Now, when it comes to docking, let's talk about that. Berths 1 through 3, they're right downtown. So if your ship docks in berths 1 through 3, you're lucky. You step off the ship, you're right there in the middle of it all. Now, if you're cruising on Norwegian Cruise Line, you might not be in luck. You might get stuck with berth 4. This berth's at Ward Cove, and it's about 20 minutes away from all the action by a shuttle. So a lot of Norwegian cruisers really don't like docking at Ward Cove, so make that a consideration when you're looking at different Alaskan options as well. When it comes to Ketchikan itself, it's beautiful. Downtown Ketchikan is compact. You can get to a lot of things, easy walking distance. It's full of color. Creek Street is the shining star here. It is the most photographed area. It's raised boardwalks lined with old buildings, including old brothels, now that are turned into boutiques and galleries. In late summer, you might get lucky. Again, I've never seen it, but one day you'll get to see salmon swimming upstream down below. At the far end is the famous Dolly's House Museum. I've been there twice. It's great, it's cheap, it's a quick, quirky stop. You learn a lot and it adds to the local flavor. It's basically an old brothel, and it talks a lot about the oldest profession and Ketchikan's history with that, and it's just really interesting. From there, you can follow Married Man's Trail uphill to Ketchikan City Park to watch the salmon at the ladder in late summer. And as you're exploring these things, you'll find a lot of times stairs and boardwalks can be slippery and slick, which is another reason why you want to leave those heavy snow boots at home and really prioritize footwear that's comfortable for your feet, but also has some good traction. When it comes to free indoor activities in Ketchikan, the Southeast Alaska Discovery Center is just a couple of blocks from the pier. And here you're going to learn more about the Tongass National Forest. The Totem Heritage Center holds unrestored 19th century totem poles, and it's worth a short walk. Now, if you want a little bit more of a touristy experience, there is the Great Alaskan Lumberjack Show. It is touristy, but it's fun. It's an easy hour of axe throwing and chainsaw stunts. If you've been to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, it's like that, but the Alaskan version. And it is easily walkable from most of the piers right there at the dock. Now, when it comes to food, in Ketchikan, like every other Alaskan port, the shining star here is going to be the fresh caught seafood. You're going to find seafood restaurants at every corner. None of them are really bad, but if you like seafood, it's definitely something you want to check out. Another thing to check out that a lot of cruisers don't know about, this is my little Ketchikan secret, is a visit to, believe it or not, the Ketchikan Fire Department. Yes, the fire department. It's not very far from the pier. You step off the dock, you can walk there. It's actually en route kind of to Creek Street, so it's not even off the path too much. And in the fire department, they have a gift shop, and their t-shirts have kind of become cult classics and favorites among cruisers who are in the know. So stop there. They do change the designs frequently, and the t-shirts go to benefit the fire department community programs. So it's definitely worth a stop, and it's a great souvenir. It's not some mass-produced thing from China. It's unique, and it helps benefit the local community. So if you decide not to just seek out free things in Ketchikan or low-cost things you want to splurge, a couple of other options are excellent. Saxman Native Village and Misty Fjords National Monument are both great options. Saxman is known for its cultural performances, the totem collection, and Misty Fjords is known for its breathtaking scenery that you can see from a float plane. It's pricey, it's going to cost you, but it's definitely one of those unforgettable bucket list experiences. Now let's talk about Skagway. Skagway, it feels straight out of some like old-timey Western frontier movie, but set in the Klondike. It exploded during the 1898 Klondike Gold Rush, and it still looks the part. Like you feel like you step back in time. The attraction here that's definitely worth paying for, and that I did on my most recent Alaskan cruise, is the White Pass and Yukon Route Railway. This is a narrow gauge line. It climbs from sea level all the way up the mountains, and it traces along the original Gold Rush Trail, and you get the most beautiful, stunning views of cliffs, waterfalls, valleys. It feels like you are in the middle of nature. It's really awesome, and there's a lot of history there. The 3-hour summit excursion is great, in my opinion. Enough time to see it all, but it doesn't eat up your whole day. I will be honest, I loved my experience with the railway. It does start to get boring after like a couple hours. I cannot imagine doing more than 3 hours, but if you love this kind of thing, do a whole day. But for me, I like the shorter summit options instead. If you do prefer to explore on your own, Skagway is very walkable. In fact, the big thing cruisers do here is just get off the ship and they just walk around. The Gold Rush Cemetery and nearby Lower Reed Falls, they're an easy outing, an easy walk from the pier. And the Poulin Creek Stream Walk is near the Small Boat Harbor, and that's just a nice quiet place to potentially spot salmon if you're visiting during the late summer. The Lower Dewey Lake Trail offers a moderate hike with big payoff views. Now, if you don't like hiking or walking, there are other things as well. There's a smart bus here that's a really affordable way to get around, and there is a visitor information center right there on Broadway, not far from the cruise ships, where you can grab free maps to get information about where to go and what to see. So it is like an old-timey town. Take the train ride up, explore the town, but other than that, the town itself is a bunch of shops, restaurants, and some museums. If you do want to get out of town, Dyea is a short ride away where you'll find some old Gold Rush ruins and tidal flats, or you can even take the seasonal fast ferry over to Haines for wildlife viewing. Now, of course, like every other Alaskan port, especially if you like seafood, fish is the name of the game. The Skagway Fish Company by the harbor is the go-to for a lot of cruisers for seafood and crab legs. But another visit that a lot of cruisers like to stop at here is the Red Onion Saloon. It's downtown, very close to the cruise ships and the port and the piers, and it's historic and lively, and it actually has an old brothel inside. I did try to stop there on my most recent visit, but the line was out the door and I'm impatient, and so I decided to skip it. If you want to try a local delicacy, you've got to stop by the Klondike Doughboy. It's a must-try for the Alaskan fry bread. This is a food here that they make. It's a lot like elephant ears if you're from the Midwest and you've been to fairs before. It's kind of like fried dough that's dusted in sweet cinnamon sugar. Definitely good, definitely worth the visit. Now let's talk about Victoria, British Columbia, because this one sneaks into Alaskan itineraries for a reason that you might not expect. And if you do call here, you might be surprised to notice that you call here late at night and often for just a few short hours. Well, there's a method to the madness. There's a reason for that. There's this old-timey U.S. maritime law that requires certain ships and itineraries, Alaskan ones, to make one foreign port stop. And being that Alaska is the United States, if you depart from Seattle, which is the United States, you have to have an international or foreign port stop. So that ends up being usually Victoria, British Columbia. Now, even though it's kind of a check off the boxes so we follow the law kind of a port stop, it's still a cool one. The Ogden Point Terminal is the terminal at Victoria, and it's not very far from downtown. It's only about 1.5 miles. It's walkable if you've got the time. Usually when you're visiting here though, you don't have the time. But it's a quick reach by taxi. A lot of times cruise lines will offer free shuttles or low-cost shuttles into town. You can do Uber. On my most recent visit, I actually found a lady running a pedicab right there at the port. I didn't plan it in advance, negotiated price, and she took us around by pedicab. Highly recommend. It was lovely. Now, if you're docked in the evening, you're going to be limited as to what you can do because a lot of things are closed. So focus on what's open late. The Inner Harbor area, it's beautiful. It's just a harbor. It's these buildings, and it's framed by the historic Empress Hotel and the Parliament buildings. It's absolutely beautiful. Just walking around, admiring the beauty and the architecture and taking photos, I think, is worth getting off here. A lot of cruisers will just say, it's too late at night. It's too short of a call. I'm gonna just stay on the ship. I think that's a miss. Even a few hours in downtown here, I think is worth the time investment. Another shining star here is Fisherman's Wharf. It's about 1 mile from port, and here you'll find floating homes and casual seafood stands that do stay open later to accommodate cruisers. Now, if you are lucky and you get a daytime call here, you can add on things like the Royal BC Museum or the Craig Darrich Castle. Butcher Gardens is also an option. It's about 30 minutes away, and it's ideal for those, again, that have these longer ports of call and daytime calls. So if you have a short call here, you have a nighttime call, skip the tours, just get into town and enjoy the beauty. Now let's talk about one of my favorite Alaskan ports. Is this the best port in Alaska? Juneau it? Okay, I'm corny. I have to make that joke every time I go to Juneau, but it's Juneau. Juneau is Alaska's capital. It is the busiest port after Ketchikan and Skagway. And although it's big-ish compared to the other Alaskan ports, it's still compact, it's lively, it's full of options, things you can get to easily from your ship. But the shining star, the crown jewel here, of course, is Mendenhall Glacier. The trick to seeing Mendenhall, though, is that you can do it affordably. The first time I visited Alaska, I wanted to go to Mendenhall Glacier. The cruise line excursions were very expensive, so I decided to DIY it. Got off the cruise ship, there's a taxi stand right there. I took a taxi. It's about 35 bucks each way. It takes about 20 to 25 minutes to get there. Quick note though, I had very limited cell service up there, so just make note of that. And while I like this option, I found a taxi there and back to be significantly cheaper than cruise line excursions. Plus I got to go at my own pace, explore at my own pace, and come back when I wanted to, instead of being stuck with other people on a cruise line excursion. You do have to be careful here because there's a Juneau taxi scam. And what happens is that taxi drivers, when you're in the taxi on the way to Mendenhall, they're gonna try to sell you your admission ticket. Now it is a legitimate ticket, usually, but they upcharge it. You do not have to buy an admission ticket from them. Politely say thank you, but no thank you. You can buy your ticket. The entrance fee is cheap during peak season. It's about $5 per person. So do not buy your ticket at inflated prices from the driver. Just buy your ticket at the visitor center once you're there. Now, once you're there are trails. It's easily marked. It's not anything particularly arduous or rustic, but their Nugget Falls Trail is an easy 2-mile walk that takes you to a gorgeous roaring waterfall at the glacier's base. It's absolutely stunning, and it's definitely one of my favorite things I've done in Alaska. Photo Point Trail is paved and is perfect if you don't want to go a 2-mile walk, or you have mobility issues, or you're a cruiser on a scooter. That's definitely a great option as well. Now, if you do want to see some sweeping vistas of Juneau, a great option is the Gold Belt Tram. It's right by the port. You'll see the terminal there where you buy tickets. You don't have to buy them in advance. You can buy them on the spot. And the tram will take you all the way up to one of the highest peaks in Juneau, where you can see sweeping views. And there's also a restaurant up there at the top. So that's a great option as well. Although I would not advise doing it during really windy conditions because I've seen some scary videos from it. So high winds, I wouldn't do it, but calm winds, absolutely worth it. Another great thing to do in Juneau is a whale watching tour. I actually did this on my most recent visit and I absolutely loved it. Whale watching is exceptional here. There are helicopter tours that will land on a glacier. That's a big bucket list experience. That's expensive, eyeball on a budget. I found the whale watching tour I did, it was affordable. I got a lot of bang for my buck. It was great. Another excursion that I've done here in the past is dog sledding. And they offer this at other Alaskan ports as well. But I want you to note, if you do dog sledding in Alaska, it's not this romantic over the peaks of pure white snow. It's a lot of mud. It's pretty messy, but still it's really fun. When it comes to food, of course, seafood is the thing in Alaska. And the go-to spot for cruisers here is Tracy's King Crab Shack. You can't miss it. It's right there on the pier. Huge building, huge sign. It's a legendary stop. Another option is the hangar on the wharf. There you'll find solid pub fare with great water views. There's also Alaskan Brewing Company where they give you free tastings. It's just a couple miles away, but there is absolutely no shortage of bars and restaurants right there at the pier and within short walking distance. Now let's talk about Sitka. Sitka might feel more relaxed and remote than the other ports because you can only reach it by air or sea. And it's that rustic nature and its isolation, I think, that gives it its charm. The Sitka Sound Cruise Terminal, now this is not like the other ones like Juneau and Ketchikan where you step off the ship and everything's right there, but it's about 6 miles from town. But the good news is the cruise lines generally offer a free shuttle that runs on a loop about every 15 minutes. They'll pick you up, they'll drop you off downtown, and it's about a 10-minute drive there. Now, the Sitka National Historic Park is the standout attraction here. Beautiful trails line up with totem poles. I mentioned this earlier. You learn a lot about the native Tlingit history, the Russian settlers. Admission is free. That's what I love as someone who balls on a budget. And it's just a beautiful scenic walk, and you can learn a lot about it on the way. Also, when you're downtown, you can explore St. Michael's Cathedral, visit the Russian Bishop's House, or stop by the Sitka Sound Science Center. The Alaska Raptor Center is a must if you're into wildlife. There they rehabilitate injured bald eagles and owls, and that'll cost you, but it's only about 15 bucks. Now, if you like a more active cruise port experience, you can take a whale watching cruise. Whale watching is also great here. You can kayak through the Sitka Sound or do an e-bike rental to explore at your own pace. But again, just watch out for what I call Alaskan sticker shock. Everything in Alaska is expensive, much more so than other cruise ports and probably what you're used to at home. Now, Sitka is unique and interesting because it does sit on those traditional Tlingit lands. And when I say Tlingit, it's spelled T-L-I-N-G-I-T. It's pronounced Tlingit. So the Tlingit are the indigenous people of Alaska. And here you're going to find lots of influences from this Tlingit history. And it also carries visible Russian influence. You'll see that everywhere in the churches and the architecture. So here it's a little bit more about kind of enjoying the history and the uniqueness of it instead of just rushing from attraction to attraction. Here you're going to soak up that natural beauty at a slower pace. I do have free port guides for Sitka and every other port I mentioned here. I'll drop those links down in the comments, and hopefully they'll help you with planning the perfect Alaskan cruise. It is truly a bucket list thing, and I hope everyone gets to do it at least once in their life.